Hello everybody and welcome along to this week's edition of the Rebel Wild Ball, and I suppose we'll start with the restrictions which were imposed during the week. Basically it means that we're going to be under house arrest until the 5th of March. However, on this occasion there seems to be a slight difference from the opposition parties. Prior to Christmas, you may remember some of these opposition individuals, Alan Kelly being chief among them, were calling for the opening up of the economy, basically to save Christmas. No, it's completely the opposite. They're more or less saying the restrictions are half-baked strategy, that they didn't go far enough, particularly in terms of quarantine and all of that. And it was interesting that the Association of Garda Sergeants and Superintendents, one of their spokesperson, I think it was the General Secretary, made the point that nobody consulted them. And they even questioned the whole validity of they being able to visit houses, because going into a private dwelling, I think the only way that probably the police can do something like that is with when they're in possession of a search warrant. So there's a lot of work to be done around all that, but it's amazing that no matter what the government are doing, the opposition will probably make sure that they make their hay. But Alan Kelly in particular, you would think that this fellow wasn't around in a past life. The vaccines, and my God, is there some grief during the week over the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine in particular, where their chief executive, Pascal Soriot, informed the European community that they would not be in the position to deliver on. They said they didn't make a promise. They just said they'd supply 100 million by the end of the month if they were able to do that, or the end of February if they were able to do it. They're now saying they can't. However, they are honouring their full commitment to the British on the grounds that they had ordered their supply much earlier than the Europeans. The European person in charge of this is not impressed and has told AstraZeneca that this is not on a first come first served basis. I think she made some reference to the fact that it wasn't a bit like queuing up below at the local butcher. But I think this is a real battle between the European and other nations, and you could argue that it is nearly modern day warfare if you wish. Like even the vaccination programs as they exist, the British have about 10% of their population vaccinated. The Europeans, I think, just over 2. In Ireland, we might be 2.5. And somebody issued findings during the week that show that, going by the current progress, that 75% of the British will be vaccinated by the 14th of July. In the US, that number will be reached by the 9th of August, whereas in Europe, we'll have to wait until the 21st of October. So, yeah, is there something there that we're really falling behind in all of this? Then the German medical authority, or whoever they have in charge of regulating their medicines in that country, have made a claim that they feel that the AstraZeneca vaccine is not at all as effective as it should be for people over 65 years of age, and that certainly would be a concern. But what has become really fashionable now is to be calling for zero COVID. I reckon it can be done in this country. Basically lock down the borders, make everybody quarantine. Now, locking down the borders, not taking into account the history of the border that exists in this country. It's there now for about 100 years. There are almost 400 crossings. And in the past, when we tried to control what moved from one jurisdiction to the other, did we have a huge amount of luck when it came to green diesel, pigs and donkeys and other items of commercial interest? I'm not too sure about all of that. The pubs seem to occupy, the rural pub seems to occupy a certain part of folklore in our country. Well, the latest gossip, if you like, and that's what maybe keeps some of us going, is that when you pass your local pub tonight trying to estimate how much he or she is getting to stay closed between the various WSS and the PUP payments, at the moment in this neck of the woods, The rumour mill has the figure between, give or take, 1,000 a week to 3,000 a week. So that's part of your homework now for next week, to have that figured out for us, how much the local publican is getting. Do you think there isn't any hurry to open up? Forget about it, my friends. In terms of sport, well, obviously nothing happening in the GA world. During the week we had a scenario where some columnists took the side of players that retire, saying they're quite entitled. We have a lot of them retiring, as you know. They're quite entitled to go onto social media and produce a statement thanking everybody from whence they kicked their first football or struck the first litter until right now, whereas others would argue that you should slip away quietly. Also, the COVID committee of the GA, I think, meet on Monday, and it's no case of planning for the return. But I think this is going to be tied into the schools, and definitely delays are going to happen, which would mean that the All-Ireland finals could be pushed from July to August, which would cause issues, of course, for clubs, because that means their championship would start a little bit later. There's been quite a amount of discussion about this directive that came from Croke Park prior to Christmas. I think it was back in November, about changing the age structures at underage level. They call them now, the main ages, they're called the primary ages, are under 13, under 15 and under 17. That's the directive that has been issued by Croke Park, and it would appear that most countries are following that. Now, it does present problems for under 14 and under 16 players, because these players may not have got matches last year. So I know that in Cork there's a number of clubs that are, have concerns about this. But I noticed that in Kerry, I think it was last night, that they've decided they're not going to have any under 14s or under 16 competitions this year. They're going to go with the Croke Park guidelines and just run under 13, under 15 and under 17. So that's going to be an item of interest, I would think. For those of you who follow the fortunes of soccer, or maybe the fortunes of the Premier League, certainly it has been one of, as we said last week, one of the best of all time. When I spoke to you on last Thursday, Burnley were about to take on Liverpool, or shall I say the other way around, and it was an absolutely incredible result with Burnley winning and 1-0. Then you had the big game on Sunday between Liverpool and Manchester United, with United winning by the odd goal in 5, but it did mean that Liverpool were back in scoring, so they have a huge game tonight when they take on Spurs, and this game will be worth watching for probably the soccer content, but also the interaction that may happen between the two charismatic managers, Jurgen Klopp and Jose Mourinho. These guys have had a little bit of history when they met in the past. But United fans, things were flying until they met Sheffield United last night, and a late Sheffield goal ensured that United lost to this opposition at Old Trafford for the first time in something like 48 years, and it finished United's unbeaten run. But the new leaders are Manchester City, thumped West Bromwich Albion 5-0 during the week, and as a consequence they become the 9th team to head the Premier League. They play Sheffield Wednesday, or Sheffield United I should say, on Saturday, and the other big game on Saturday is Arsenal take on Manchester United. And Arsenal, despite losing their cup game, have won 5 out of their 6 Premier League games, and even though after they had a real dodgy spot, I think they're back in business. That's a huge game for both clubs, no point in saying otherwise. Chelsea, who have a new manager after they sacked poor old Frank Lampard. They've got in a guy who was sacked himself. These managers, the first thing to getting sacked is to get a job, and the opposite also applies. Thomas Tuchel, who was fired by Paris Saint-Germain, has now taken over Chelsea. He oversaw the draw last night, the 1-1 draw with Wolves. Well, they have a big game when they take on Burnley. I aforementioned Burnley on Sunday. Leicester City, who drew last night, take on Leeds. Liverpool will play West Ham, and Spurs play Brighton. So they are I suppose we call them the important games. If we follow other clubs, I'm sure we're not going to be too impressed with that. Last week we spoke about the Bannon player Conor Hourihane, who decided to, leave Aston Villa on loan until the end of the season and go to Swansea. And my God, he's had a great start there. Make a huge contribution to their cup victory against Nottingham Forest, and then he made his league debut last night. They're a championship side, they're in second place, and they were playing Brentford, who were one of the leaders in that group for promotion, and Brentford were ahead. But a Conor Horan free kick, and these are his real specialities, and the one last night was absolutely top class. You know, he couldn't have asked for a better start. And as we said last week about him, if he gets promoted with Swansea, that means he'd have won 3 promotions, and certainly would be the most promoted player, I would imagine, in Irish soccer history. But we'll be keeping an eye on his progress, as we will with other players, hopefully, as the season goes on. In terms of rugby, it's a quiet weekend. The Six Nations starts next week. I suppose last week was a bit disappointing for Munster fans when they failed in another attempt to beat Leinster in the Pro 12 game at Thomond Park. And poor old JJ Hanrahan, the kicker, always gets grief if he misses. And one of them hit the post, and another was a rather easy attempt, which didn't find the target. What's on this weekend is the Pro 12 or Pro 14. There's only 12 teams in it. But this competition is done and dusted if it stays in its present format, because Munster are going to top the Conference B. Leinster will probably overtake Ulster to Conference A, and both of them will meet in late March in the final. That may change though, because the plan after that was that they'd play this Rainbow Cup, where 4 South African clubs would join 12 clubs from the Pro 12 to take part in another competition during April, May and June, if you wish. I can't see that happening, that the South African clubs won't be allowed. So if that be the case, the Pro 12 organisers might revert back and have quarterfinals and semi-finals, but we'll have to wait and see. Munster's game this week, they're playing an Italian side, Benetton, who haven't won a match out of their 9, and they're only making up the numbers there. Interesting though, if you're into the morality of sponsorship of sporting competitions, and you do remember a few years ago when Guinness got involved with the GA, there was public outcry how dare a sporting organisation would take money, an amateur sporting organisation would take money from a drinks company. Well, if you saw any of the interviews during the week in promoting the Six Nations Championship, and this Six Nations is massive business. Guinness were plastered all over the place. Was there a word of objection? Absolutely not. The CEO of that organisation was Ben Morales' name. He informed everybody that they've sold 14.5% of the commercial rights. That's all now, 14.5% of the commercial rights. It's a 5-year deal for 409 million. Now what this means is that you're going to pay to watch these matches very, very shortly. They go behind what they call behind the paywall. Lovely term. And the RFU will end up about 50 million of this. So this, sometimes you watch these and you think you're just purely watching sports. This is a massive, massive business. The RFU, as I said, will get about 50 million out of it. But anyway, the Six Nations, it starts next week when Ireland take on Wales, and hopefully if we're around next week we'll be talking about that game. This day last week we were informed the death of a great character from the Irish greyhound industry, if you like, a gentleman by the name of Brendan O'Day, originally from Middleton but was living in the Carshill area of Douglas. And I know that he was so well known in, as I said, in the greyhound community. He was a trainer for over 60 years, a man who was a fountain of knowledge as well as able to tell great stories. His daughter Serena is still involved in the industry. Those of you who go to the track in Corraheen Road would know her. She's a race commentator in there and has worked for RT and in that business as well. So to Brendan's family, his friends and everybody in the community that would know him throughout the country, we extend our sympathies. So till the next time, take care and mind yourself.